Brought to you by Bookspots.com.
The farmer who wanted to become a king. Once, in a distant land, there lived a man named Ganapat, a simple traveler wandering through dense forests in search of adventure. One day, after walking for hours, he found himself in a dark part of the forest, far away from any village or road. As the sun began to set, Ganapat grew tired and decided to rest by a large boulder. Just as he closed his eyes, a deep voice rumbled through the air. "Who dares to rest in my forest without my permission?" Startled, Ganapat looked up and saw a giant man, taller than the tallest tree, standing before him. The giant's eyes gleamed with hunger, and his shadow loomed over Ganapat like a dark cloud. Terrified, Ganapat stammered, "I didn't know this was your forest. Please forgive me." The giant man grinned wickedly. "Forgiveness? I was about to eat you for disturbing my peace. But I'll give you a chance to save yourself. I will tell you a story, and at the end, I will ask you a question. If you answer it correctly, I will let you go. If you fail, well, you will become my dinner." Ganapat, trembling but hopeful, nodded. "I will try." The giant sat down, shaking the earth with his weight, and began to narrate his tale. Long ago, the giant started, in a small village surrounded by hills. There lived a humble farmer named Raghav. Like all farmers, Raghav worked from sunrise to sunset, tending to his fields, hoping for a good harvest each year. But the land was dry, and the rains were unpredictable. One fateful year, the rains failed entirely, and Raghav's crops withered. He and his family were left on the brink of starvation. One evening, as Raghav sat under a banyan tree, brooding over his fate, he saw a shimmering golden bird land nearby. The bird's feathers sparkled as if made of sunlight, and its eyes gleamed with wisdom. The bird spoke, its voice calm and gentle. "Raghav, I have seen your struggles, and I can offer you a single wish. Choose wisely, for this wish could change your life." Without hesitation, Raghav said, "I wish to become a king." The golden bird cocked its head, its eyes narrowing. "Very well, Raghav, but remember, being a king is not just about ruling over people. A king must shoulder great responsibility. Rule wisely, for power without wisdom can destroy everything you hold dear." The bird flapped its wings and vanished. In an instant, Raghav found himself dressed in royal robes, seated on a grand throne in a vast palace. He had become the king of a mighty kingdom. At first, Raghav was overwhelmed with joy. He basked in his new life, feasting and celebrating his newfound power. But soon, problems arose. The people of his kingdom began to suffer. Crops failed in distant lands, bandits raided villages, and unrest grew among the people. Raghav, unused to the complexities of ruling, ignored these issues, believing they were beneath him. His focus remained on luxuries, while the kingdom slowly started to crumble. One day, an old woman entered his court with a small, withered plant in her hand. Her eyes were sharp, and her voice was filled with quiet authority as she said, "Your Majesty, this plant was once full of life, but it has withered under neglect. So, too, has your kingdom. A king's duty is like that of a farmer. If you do not nurture the land and the people, all will be lost." Raghav was taken aback by her words. That night, he could not sleep. The image of the withered plant haunted him. He realized, for the first time, that ruling was not about luxury and power, but about responsibility and wisdom. The next day, Raghav set out to change. He listened to the needs of his people, traveled to the far corners of his kingdom, and made decisions that would benefit everyone, not just himself. Over time, his kingdom prospered, and Raghav became known as a wise and just ruler. Years later, the people of the kingdom praised him, not for the wealth he had amassed, but for the way he had guided them through difficult times. The golden bird never returned, but Raghav had no need for wishes anymore. He had learned the true meaning of kingship through his own actions. The giant man paused, his deep voice trailing off like the last rumble of thunder after a storm. Then he looked down at Ganapat with a piercing gaze and asked, "Now, tell me, Ganapat, should Raghav be praised for becoming a wise and just king, even though he initially sought power for selfish reasons? Did he truly deserve the admiration of his people? Ganapat thought carefully. After a moment, he spoke, his voice steady but respectful. Raghav may have wished to become king out of selfishness, but what matters is not how he began his journey, but how he ended it. He realized his mistakes, learned from them, and corrected his ways. A person who learns from their errors and grows wiser deserves to be praised. Therefore, Raghav earned the admiration of his people through his transformation into a just and responsible king. The giant man listened to Ganapat's words and then laughed, a deep, rumbling laugh that shook the ground. You are indeed wise, Ganapat. You have answered correctly, and as promised, I will not eat you. Standing up, the giant stretched and said, I have no need for those who are clever and can think for themselves. You are free to go. With that, the giant turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Ganapat standing there, relieved and thankful for his quick thinking. He resumed his journey, carrying with him the lesson of Raghav, the farmer who had once wished to be a king.